Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching this show from. My name is Denise Belisle, and I'm a serenity expert and positive intelligence specialist. Welcome to the It's All Good show. Lucas here for a chat. I have the honor today to have Diana Page Jordan, and she's a book coach and author and book coach. We'll talk about the ABC later. And but today, before we go further, I want to ask you to, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like my channel, click on the little bell to get notified next time I have a video coming in, because I do these interviews every week. Today is week 80. Amazing. So I'm excited to have Diana here with me. And also, I want to explain why I call this It's All Good. First of all, it's my favorite cup. It's all good. And the reason why I call it It's All Good, because I felt that in life, you can't change the past. I've tried several times, trust me, to go back and change things in my mind. They always end up the same. And in the future, well, I can't really predict the future. I don't have a crystal ball where I can predict what's going to happen. So what I realize is that when I am here right now in the present, it's all good. I can make today the best day of my life by living today at this moment. So right now I'm super excited to be inviting Diana on the stage. She's an amazing woman. I've met her not that long ago, and ever since I've met her, I always discover little gems from talking with her and interacting with her. So I'm excited to introduce her to you. So here she is, without any further delay. Diana Page Jordan, ladies and gentlemen, woo-hoo, welcome to the stage.
Hi, Denise. Thank you so much for inviting me on. This is awesome.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And so tell me a little bit about you, and how did you become an author and book coach?
Well, you know what? From the very, very beginning, as a little kid, I had a search for truth. Things that I saw around me didn't seem to be true, and I wanted to ask questions, but I was too quiet to ask questions. So I became a journalist many years later. Not many. It was, I think I had my first published piece as a little artist, Bad Moon, Good Moon, and it ended up in the town paper, which was kind of cool. But I think that kind of got me going on, and honestly, the search for truth that I've had, it led me to becoming a journalist, which was awesome. I loved being a radio and TV news anchor, news reporter. And then I always had this side hustle of interviewing authors. It came about serendipitously. There's one day I was in the radio station, and a friend of mine, my coworker, came in. She goes, "I need you to do something for me." I go, "Like what?" She says, "I've got this author coming in, and I double booked myself, and I need you to interview her." I go, "But I haven't read the book." She goes, "It doesn't matter. She's an astrologer. Her name is Diana Stone." And I thought, like, okay, Diana Page Jordan, Diana Stone. I have a feeling this is going to be okay. So from that moment on, I loved interviewing authors, interviewed hundreds, probably thousands of them.
Wow.
And for the AP radio networks, 80 stations, 800 stations. And I ended up also in a writing group with Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, and Cheryl Strayed, who brought in the first few pages of her book that would become Wild.
Amazing.
Yeah. And there were, I don't know, for a decade I was in that group and was part of at least a dozen New York Times bestselling books, probably more than that. So then I also started doing publicity for authors. So I've kind of gone the whole circle, and then I thought a few years ago, I was still doing radio and TV, and I thought, it's kind of time to change the program a little bit. What do I really love? I really love interviewing. I really love it. And I noticed how so often authors they were best-selling authors, they'd been around the country, and they'd go to me, they'd say, "You pulled that right out of me." Or, "I've been on a 20-city book tour, and nobody's ever asked me that before." And I thought, ooh, something's there.
You had a good instinct for asking those little questions.
Yeah, but it was like they loved it because it pulled out the genuine truth that they had inside. So again, truth comes around, right? So I'm helping people write their transformational nonfiction. They call it prescriptive fiction, and it's basically memoir blended with how-to. And that makes it absolutely lovely because I love talking to people about their stories. What made you make these particular choices in your life? And
Mhm.
usually people will end up creating something out of the pain. We've heard that a million times, but
Mhm.
seriously, like how do you heal? Okay, so how do you heal?
Yeah.
You get brave, you get your courage, you go do it, and then you go like, oh, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Let me help the next kids up the block. Let me help that. So that's what I've been doing. I've been co-creating books with a few dozen authors by now, and more to come. And so I'm really excited about the way this has all worked out, because
Oh,
now I'm
wonderful.
closer to my truth.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, have you ever written a book on your own, like just you?
Yeah, I've ghostwritten a few books, and then also I have a memoir that's with an agent right now. So we're waiting to see how that goes. And the working title is Bookmarks: From Mitch Albom to Gary Zukav, How I Saved My Life by Interviewing Authors I've Known and Sometimes Loved. So,
Oh, that's
yeah,
that. Wow, that's going to be an awesome book.
I learned so much from, they may not have known they were imparting their wisdom in that way, in that
Yeah,
personal
yeah,
way, but
yeah.
they did. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because every people, like even with me, right? Like as I said, it's my 80th episode today. So every day, every Monday, last week was a tiny episode, but every Monday at noon I come and I do a segment, and and I learned so much from the people I'm interviewing. I get little bits of wisdom, and that's why I love doing those, and I don't want to miss it because it's so rich in
Yeah.
information. And I imagine for me, like for you, for example, when you interview all these author and all these people, like they like, wow, the path that they worked through and how they got to create what they've created, and everything you must have observed and absorbed from these people must have been totally incredible. So I think your book will be a great success, and help other people too.
I hope it does. That's the main point, really, because I figure, well, if the trouble that I went through, many other people have also. And so
Yeah.
therefore I'll put it this way. My 92-year-old mother a few weeks ago said to me, "You used to carry your books around with you like they were armor." I'm like, "Oh." And they protected me. What was
Yeah.
inside was of course more important than the physical part of the book, but I remember going to the library, walking to the, I rode my bike to the library. She would go to the liquor store, and then she would go like, "Okay, you can go to the library." So I'd go to the library, and that would work out just fine because I would get my books and they would keep me safe, and we get so much wisdom from that. So many times the authors don't even know how much they're creating in the world with their works and with their
Mhm.
honesty, with their integrity, with their
Yeah.
authenticity. Yeah. And a lot of the times I would talk to the authors afterward, done a professional interview during, and then when it was over, I'd go like, "Oh, so you wrote this book um, about transformation in this way. Like, can I just share something of mine?" And, so at times I've done hypnotic sessions with authors and things like that and learned even more. So it's really fun. But I feel like at this stage of my game, it's time for me to flip it and help other people write their books. And in
Yeah, tell
doing,
me a little bit more about, because I can see the transition, right? Like you were initially loving books and reading them. Then you ended up interviewing people that wrote book while you were doing journalism, and then you became somebody that helps people write their book, but now you're a book coach. So what is the book coach doing following all of that transition?
yeah. So about 5 years ago, I thought, well, what do I love most? And interviewing, easy,
Mm,
totally easy. And then I realized, oh, the inspiration part and the intuitive part. So it's interviewing, intuition, and inspiration. That's what I bring. And it feels like a really sweet blend. Like when I'm talking to somebody, usually I'm working with people on Zoom, and given the few years we've been through, that turned out perfectly. It just was an easy flow. And so I send them the recordings and the transcript, and they can use that in their books. But that keeps us like one to one, really really tight. You know, we're looking into each other's eyes. I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and I'm pulling out stuff, and they're going like, oh, yeah. And what about that story? Oh, yeah, there's more to it than that. You know, so it's really fascinating. There's one woman I worked with who is a holistic doctor, and she wanted to write her book about how to know whether to go to the ER or get some lavender or, you know, some of the, that kind of thing. And so this one day she came in, she was on Zoom with me, and I looked at her, she goes, you look really tired. What's going on? And she says, and it sounds kind of rude in a way, but it wasn't. It was like something I was picking up. Yeah. The day before, she had taken her 2 teenage daughters on a hike, and they accidentally hit a beehive. And the bees came out like by the dozens and stung them. And they were running and shrieking. And, you know, they finally got back to the car. And she's like, okay. Her illustration was she had the right potions, shall we say, in the car. And she also took them to the ER. Yeah. So it was a really great illustration of what happens when you walk into that kind of situation, when you are a doctor and you're like, okay, when do you go to the doctor? When do you, you know,
treat yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I got a cat here at my face. I have a cat, and sometimes his hair gets on my nose. Excuse me.
Well, that's really funny because right here we got Jet.
Oh, Jet, hi, laying on your nap.
Yes, and I was just at that moment thinking, my nose feels a little bit itchy, but oh well.
Yeah.
He saved my life enough times that he's good. He
can do it. Yeah, I have a cat too, and he's, you know, like he's 16 and a half now, and I was actually every single morning off subject, but it's good. That's why it's all good show, right? It's all good show. Yeah. He comes in my bed probably 15, 20 minutes before I want to get up. And then I pet him and I talk to him. And sometimes I try to go back to sleep. But what I do every single morning without fail is I sit in bed, I hold him in my arm, I pet him, and then he pushes his head under my chin, right? And I pet him and I give him kisses and I tell him how much I love him and how much he's important in my life, because he is, right? He loves doing that in the morning. You could stay there for a long time until he say, okay, now it's time to feed me. But but it's something that every morning we do that. And I feel that it's so important I do that with my cat because that's my family in here. But also, just a side note, I think it's really important to actually do that with our loved one, with our children, with the people around us daily, right? Like, I'm just doing a parenthesis here, but to tell people around us how much they're important to us. In Canada, it's Family Day. So I just made a little video of telling people, like suggesting to people to love their family, to love everybody every day, like to cherish the people you have around you. End of parenthesis.
Well, he will be 20 in May. Oh. And when he was a kitten, he saved my life. So he gets to say, and I wrote a story about him, and it's published in a book by Leslie Rule called Where Angels Tread. So
I need to know now, how did he save your life?
I had just been diagnosed with late onset type 1 diabetes, and everybody else was in the house. In the middle of the night, I feel this little pawing, you know.
Oh, yeah.
He won't leave me alone. So I'm like, all right, what time is it? Oh, great. It's 3:45. I don't have to get up for like 3 more hours, you know, or whatever it was. And so he kept petting me, and I kept trying to go back. Nope. Kept waiting. So finally I get up and I test my glucose, and it's 42, which is, you know, it's
way too high.
Yeah, way too low. And if it had been
42.
Yeah. So in other words, he made sure I woke up, got out of bed, and he actually was really funny because even though he's a little kitten, he goes walking down the hall to the kitchen, and he sits right in front of the refrigerator. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get some apple juice out. You know, it was really
wow.
So yeah,
because what would happen if you would not have taken the orange juice? Like people could die, right, from having too low sugar.
That's right. They could not wake up. They might not wake up. Yeah.
Wow.
So
absolutely. And they know, they're so intuitive, right?
Yeah.
I get goosebumps just thinking about it, you know. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, we find stories anywhere, you know, when we really connect with something, and we're writers. It's really important to get that down. Every morning I journal. I don't have it nearby me right now, but every single morning, the first thing I do, I get up at 5:15 now. And the first thing I do is just write whatever's coming up. And sometimes stuff lands on the page that's like, whoa, this showed me something that I didn't even know was going on. And the funny thing is, like, sometimes I'll go like, oh, this is so great. And I'll copy it and put it into my book or something. And then I'll go back and I'll read it solitary. No, it doesn't work. The kind of writing you do for journaling is so different from the writing you do, say, for a book or an article or something like that. And it's really interesting to see that, because you go like, you get the blessing of the journal writing, and then you go like, okay, well, maybe I can pluck a few little thoughts out of that and write it as an article or as a chapter in a book or something. So
so I think with my itchy nose we diverted. So I was asking you, how do you help people as a book coach? We'll go back to that initial question.
Yes, thank you. I forgot. No, what was it again?
How did you end up being a book coach, and how do you support people with that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally love it. I mentioned earlier how it came to me as, this is the right path, right? After all the years of interviewing thousands of people, it was like, this is totally it. And my process is, I just love it. So it's a weekly meeting on Zoom, and we do an hour. And the first meeting is like, I pull everything out I could possibly pull out. We're having a really deep conversation. And then I create an outline, and then you can change it, alter it, whatever. Well, let's definitely discuss it the next meeting or two. And then it's like, write what is calling you to be written. Because so often we've got something deep inside. It's like, you know what? It's clamoring to come out. It wants to come out. So we write that. And then, as we go on, each meeting there's a lot of feedback. I get their materials like 48 hours in advance of our meeting. And I go through it and go like, okay, so when we then meet, it's like the segue from one chapter to the next, making sure the structure is right. Sometimes we change the structure a little bit, but the point being, you want to grab the reader and give them your depth. You want them to get your message at such a level that you're not hammering on the head, but that you're going like, you're opening your heart, And so that's what we go for. And every week for an hour, there's that power. Now, here's the other thing, writing. It's not just like an easy, okay, no.
It doesn't always work like that.
Yeah. A lot of people go like, you know what? And I say, I invite them to text me or something. If you're like, can't do it today, just can't write today. It's like, okay. So I'll interact with people, like say they text me, I'm stuck, jump on the phone, whatever, help get that past that. And I love from the day, well, let me finish this story first, then I'll tell you a tangential point of it. So the goal is to get the book done, in 6 months. And you can keep adding on if you want to. But the point is, you want to have the structure of the book so it holds together. And you want it so you go from one chapter to the next and the reader keeps going with you. And sometimes they're lighter stories. Sometimes it's heavier. It's not like, do these 10 things and you'll be fine. No, it's more like, okay, here are a few stories of my clients that went through this. And here's what they experienced. Now, we hear this all the time in marketing, but in writing a book, it's way different. It's much more touching, and it's much more authentic. And this way you get your message out and people feel shifted. They feel gifted and shifted from the work that I do. And it's just really, really sweet. The other thing that I was going to say is let's say you want one of the big five, okay, HarperCollins, Simon Schuster, the big five publishers. You need an agent for that. So what you need for that is a book proposal. And what you need for the book proposal is you need an outline and your first 3 chapters. So that is the very least you'll get from doing the 6 months. You'll get more than that, but you walk away with that, you are like so good to appeal to a good agent. And then if you are a healer or a teacher or somebody who's a speaker, something like that, you want to get your whole book done. And in that case, you can get self-published. I had a professor who self-published her book, and she came back to me. She said, you know what? This is so great. I'm getting speaking engagements all over, and I'm selling it from the back of the room, and people are like buying it. It's much better than a business card. So she was super happy. So there are 2 different kinds of writing that you can do. And then if you're writing the whole book, it might take a little longer, you know, like maybe 9 months, but that's okay, because the process is to be calm and integrated and authentic and really give the gifts that you are here to give.
And something came to me when you were talking about the publisher. So when you work with people, do you help them to reach out those publisher and to support them in what to write and how to sign up a proposal? Do you work with them to do that too?
Well, I've created book proposals for people, and I've also given them lists of people to go to. Like I had a woman that I was working with, an interior designer, who's working on a book. Actually, it's so cute. She came to me to write a book about color. And then I'm like going, you know, this is more like tarot cards is what you're creating. And so she ended up creating a deck of cards and a little book. And so, like, what color do you want in your design of your home?
I understand what you're saying. Like it was just cards, and then in the little book it explains what are the cards and what the color means and stuff. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So like there are always ways to twist and turn. And I do know like Hay House and Llewellyn and New World Library, they all do card decks.
They all do card deck. Yeah, I have about a dozen of them.
Yeah, we do. The thing of it is that you asked me a question about like, I can guide people one way or another based on what their interests are, because it's so important to be aligned with your purpose. Like they always say, you know, who's your reader, who's your avatar, you know, all that. In this case, I'm more gentle about that. I'm not hammering you on the head with, okay, who are you writing for? But it becomes obvious. It's part of the work that we do together.
Yeah, of course. I mean, whatever you're writing, there's got to be an audience, right? Like like if you write a romance novel, where you're not catering to men in their 60s, right?
Probably not.
I mean, probably not. Like I don't say that men in their 60s don't read romance novel. Don't judge me if you do. I don't judge you if you do. But in theory, I know when I was a teenager and a young adult, I would like eat them like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like these, you know, reading those like, oh, you know, like that, feeling like, you know, I was like in that story and all that and dreaming and that, you know, or if you're in a 30-something married woman that's unhappy with a relationship, she will read those, right? Because then it makes her dream about, you know, what could be possible. But you need to have that avatar, right?
Yeah. And that's the whole point of books anyway. I mean, like, for example, a publisher will throw you out, or an agent will throw you out if you say, oh, my book's for everybody. No. No. But the point is that there is somebody out there who wants to read what you have in mind to write. There may be a lot of people out there that are wishing somebody would write a book that they need. So it's like there's a gift in you. If you feel compelled to write a book, if you really want to write, if you've got something in you that's like, I got to be born, you know, it's you got to write it. And sometimes you need somebody like me to be by your side and help pull the stuff out and help you format it and that kind of thing. A lot of people go like, oh, I can try it myself. And you can. What I know what I was going to say a moment ago, when I was in that writing group with Chuck Palahniuk and Cheryl Strayed and Chelsea Cain and Monica Drake, Lydia Yukonovich, Susie Vitale-Soule, amazing authors, amazing. I was so lucky. And actually, there's a story about that. Hold on to that. I'll tell you that in a moment. But and it was so great. Every week we would come in with our pages. We just call them pages, you know, like 3 or 4 pages. We'd read them. Everybody be quiet while we read. And then one by one, people would comment, you know, give feedback on what you'd written. Yeah. So it was really intense, beautiful feedback that you'd get. You could choose it or not, but it was always kind. It was always on point. And it gave you like, oh, this is, if I did it that way, you know, it would have impact more people more favorably, which is really cool.
And when you're surrounded with all those brain, you know, I mean, you feel so lucky to be able to get their feedback, right?
Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah, it was really fun. And the way this happened, this is the story I was about to tell you. And it was pretty amazing. Like I had interviewed Chuck Palahniuk a few times, and just for the heck of it, he lived in the area where I live. And one day I left him a voicemail message and didn't think anything of it. And I'm driving home one day, a few days later, and all of a sudden he calls me back. So I pick up the phone and he goes like, hey, you know, what are you up to? And I didn't even think of what I was saying, but I said, I've been procrastinating writing my book. And then at that very instant, around the corner comes a white Lexus with a license plate that says Write, W-R-I-T-E. And I went, oh my God. He says, what? Are you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm fine. And I told him what happened. He goes, are you in a writing group? I go, like, no. And he says, well, you are now.
Oh,
so he's
like,
I got to
moment again. My God, you know,
yeah. I got to clear it with the others, but yeah. So that's how I got in. It was like crazy.
It's unbelievable. Can you imagine, you know, oh, I'm procrastinating, I'm writing my book. And then you see, right, you know, and then he invites you to the group. Unbelievable.
Yeah. All these, that happens in life. It's so cool. You know what I mean? Like there's so many times when we are clear on what we want and we're calm about it. Yeah. It's like all these magical things line up and you go like, whoa, how did that happen? Well, it happened because you were clear.
Yeah. Also you're open to receiving, because I've been doing some work in the last couple of weeks about it. I call that the breakthrough system. And I think you signed up for it, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, probably.
No, but you got to sign up for it. And what it is I help people narrow down their goal, like really find out how to reach your goal. And I've worked, you know, with many people, and at the end they're like, oh my goodness, this is so incredible. I know exactly what I need to do. But there was a woman with whom I won't say name and situation, but she said, well, I'm so busy, I don't have time for this. And then I said, well, sometimes you need to eliminate things out of your life in order to open yourself up, right? If you feel like you're so close, there's no room for what you want to have in your life, you're not going to receive it. So you need to free up your schedule. You need to open yourself up and welcome whatever the universe or whatever people believe, God or Allah or whatever people believe, but to bring back to you the angel or whatever that is, you know, to allow that to come to you. Because if you're wearing an armor, nothing will come in, right? True. So we have to be able to open ourselves up and say, okay, I'm willing to be receiving that message right now. And somehow you just let yourself up and say, okay, well, I'm procrastinating writing a book, and boom, right, you know.
That's like, what? Yeah, but I had to notice it, to your point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You were ready. Yeah.
And
that's cool. Like I've been also I've been working on writing a book. Actually, it is in some ways it is created. These are videos that I've made that need to be transcribed into a writing format. And I met a lady but I talked to a friend last week, and she said, you know, I love doing that, doing editing and transcribing. And I say, I'll put you to the test. So I haven't done it yet because I didn't do it this weekend. But I will send her with my audio, and then she can just transcribe it. I'll read it. And if I like it, that's it. My book is done, because I have the way it is I'm going to create the first part is a little bit about me. And I think it's pretty much written. It's like where I'm from and, you know, why I'm writing this book and the path that led me to this. And the second part is lesson learned. Things that I've learned on my path that made me a serenity expert, that made me the person that is here right now interviewing you, right? How did I go about to be who I am today? And these are little tidbit of knowledge and way of living and way of thinking. And I've done those videos I have about, you know, like 20 of them of little tidbits. So if that's translated, put it 20 chapter, here you go. You got a book, you know.
Now I'm going to argue a little bit here. Okay. You can copy paste if you want to, but here's the thing. When you go back through those interviews and you look at them, you're going to feel like there's something a little bit missing. And what's missing is your interaction, your thoughts that are going on behind.
I'm not talking about these interviews.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about those. I've made videos somewhere else of me talking about a subject, talking about ambition, talking about meditation, talking about acceptance, talking about, and then these are things that I've learned. No, these are not these interviews.
Oh, very good. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
because then it's for you. That's I'm putting you on the spot. You are the gem into this video. It's not about me.
Well, I get what you're saying now. I thought you meant like, because so many people will say, okay, I'm doing these speeches, so I am going to or courses or something. So I'm just going to copy paste and that's my book. Okay, maybe that's an ebook, but it's not a book,
Yeah, no. The other one are actually set up in a way that these are like unique chapters in my book, and talking about the way I see life on those topics, and then I elaborate on that. And thank you for your input. You're totally right.
Yeah. And you're welcome. And what's cool is that when you can speak your book, like you're saying, instead of like writing it. I have found that physical writing is more in tune with who you are than tapping on the keys. And when you're speaking from your mind, you got to be careful that your judgment center is like relaxed and, and not playing a part in that, because it's so valuable when you come from the depth of who you are. And sometimes when we're tapping the keys, we start to think, or we're speaking, then the brain starts, So my point is, relax, enjoy the process. And if you've got to do otter to transcribe your stuff, you can do that and then re-interact with it. And
of course. Yeah, that makes sense. So my question to you is, when you write your memoir, you wrote your memoir, did you just wrote it by hand?
I did a lot of that, but actually I tapped on it. Still the cat. I know. Yeah, it was hard to change from physical handwriting to the keys. But what I did do every time is, after I finished typing it out, I would print it up and then I would go through it with my pen. Yeah. And a lot of times I would find like, oh, this could be said better this way or whatever. The keys are faster, keyboard's faster, but when it comes down to like, you'll go through a lot of revisions. People think that, first draft and you're published. Well, probably not.
No, for sure.
But time, the beauty of it is every time it gets better. Every single time you do it.
Because I can see that with what I'm building right now, because of course these are all stories, and then once it's all there, then you look at it and say, and then things might not work, right? Maybe this chapter is not needed, or I need another one, or something missing in the path of serenity or greatness or whatever, right? So it's good. No, I totally agree that even once it's all transcribed, then it's not going to be the final book for sure. It's going to be a few revisions for sure. I agree with you.
And there's a sense too of reflective voice, where you are putting your whole, especially memoir, when you're putting your whole adult beyond that phase, you're looking back at maybe you're 10 or 12 years old or something. And it's kind of like the richness of that experience, even though maybe at the time it was horrible, but later on you're like, oh, this is what I got out of it, and you wouldn't know that when you're 10 or 12 or whatever, but you do know that later on, so that you can add in that reflective voice and make that maybe fearful experience even more powerful, but in a positive way. I don't feel like anything's lost. Do you know what I mean? It's like the stuff we've been through, it's all valuable in some way. It's not easy. Some of it.
I agree with you. The way I've been experiencing that in my life is, I came to a point. It's actually when I started to learn emotional intelligence. That was in in the 90s. And then I learned that to be totally responsible for my life. Like whatever happened to me, I take responsibilities. But then with that, I also came to say that never to regret, because I'm here, like, especially like right now, if I take today, because I can only judge for today, but I'm here right here today interviewing you. That's because of all of what happened in my past.
Yeah.
Because everything brought me to this moment. I remember a movie with Gwyneth Paltrow where it's called Sliding Doors. Have you seen that movie?
A zillion years ago, but it's like
an old movie. And one part of the movie is she run to get her train in the morning to go to work, and she gets into the train and then she goes to work. And that's one half of the scenario of the movie. The second half, and it's interchanged, right? They play it together, and then the second part that she gets the train door closed, and then she missed the train. And I think there's no other train, or she has hours to wait or whatever. And then she goes back home, and then she found her boyfriend in bed with somebody else. As soon as she left, the girlfriend or whatever, the lover came in, and then that changed her life and that situation, right? And so then you have both lives living side by side with that movie, which means that, sometimes one event can change totally what's going to happen to you in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So people say, oh, I wish I could go back and change this. Well, maybe not,
You have a choice today, though. Like, I feel like when you can write out the pain that you've been through, even if it's just for yourself,
it's healing.
It's so healing. Yeah. It's something. And you can write anything.
I have an exercise like that with my clients where I get them to write their pain and in paper, pen and paper, and to write it and to really ponder upon it. And then if you want to know more about this exercise, contact me. I'll tell you more. But it's healing. Like, there's a second part to it and a third part. And at the end, they're like, wow, I even forgot what the story was all about initially. Because it's like you just empty it. You just let it go, right?
Yeah. And there has been some science about handwriting versus like typing. The science is that our mind is so much more connected to the hand, and that's why we pull out more material that way. Something like that. So yeah, that's super true.
Talking about pulling out experience, tell me what's your process to helping people like write their book in a unique way? So what do you do that really help people to let it out? So how do you work that out? Because sometimes I could see that I'm like, whenever I work on one of my videos and I write, because I transcribe them, but then I modify things, right? Because the way you talk is not the way you write. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't know. I'm stuck here. I don't know what to say. And then, so how do you get people to actually get their things out?
Usually what I'll do is I will ask them questions about the place where they are right there. Okay. Let's say they're finishing the story. They don't know where to go next. So I'll ask them about it, and like pull more stuff out. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is part of another story. It's like peeling an onion, like, your life. And we live like, just like fast. Right. But when we really think about it, I'll give you a quick example. I'm in my home and I'm writing and I am editing tape, and the back of me, I have a new roommate. I didn't really know him yet. Comes into the kitchen. I wasn't aware of that yet. All of a sudden he pours ice cubes into a glass. I scream. I jumped and screamed. Ice cubes in the glass. That's all it took. And I'm like, oh. And then I realized, oh, yeah, when I was growing up, ice cubes in the glass meant people were going to get drunk and bad things were going to happen. So, yeah. So something as simple as ice cubes in the glass. Whoa, you've got a story, right? So that's kind of how I work with people, and really deep or not, it's up to you. But I feel like when we are completely confidential in these, I record on Zoom, as I said, and Otter transcribes it. So that's good too. And then you can choose. That's the whole thing. You get to choose what you want to put out there. One of the fun exercises I love to do is to use all the senses. Chuck Palahniuk used to say, on the body is the kind of writing that they did in the writing group before I joined it. And what it is like, what are all the senses that are going on as you're writing? You can write one line, and if you think about it, you're going to be, let's say you're thinking back to a man walks into a store. Okay. Sounds like the beginning of a joke. It's not, but let's say the guy walks into the store. Okay. So what does he look like? How old is he? Is he bent over? Is he stumbling? Does he smell funny? Is he carrying anything? Like all those different things. And all of a sudden you have all the senses, right? Yeah. So that's one of the really cool things too. That's fun to work with. It opens everything up.
And that's what I admire from writers. It blow me away, when I read that, and how do they think of that? And that's exactly what you just described, right? Like you tell a segment of your story, and then what did the guy smell like? Is he the guy that from the street, and then you have that pungent smell of urine as you pass by him, and then, you know, and then you make your listener or your reader feel that urine, you know, as you go through, because everybody smelled that in the past, right? Somehow. And it blew me away, you know, when people write so well.
Well, I don't want to leave people with that image, because everybody's probably going like, yeah.
Oh, it's not like
but, you know, think about this. Okay, think about this. You open up your closet door and you see a dress that you have not worn for a very long time, and you touch the fabric and you go like, oh, I remember that I wore this dress at this amazing night. I wore Coco Chanel perfume. I was with this tall, handsome guy. We danced all night, and all of a sudden you're in a whole different story. All you did was open your closet door. So using all that kind of energy, you know, it's just fun, right? Yeah.
Wow, it's beautiful.
That's part of the process that I use.
That's pretty cool. So look at that. It's already almost 1:45. We've been chatting away like blah, 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 blah. We're awesome. We could stay here an hour. So, but we'll bring it to a close. So before we close this, tell me, is there one tip that you would like to give people if they're thinking or always wanted to write a book? What would be that one tip?
I use prompts a lot. Like my older son, I've sent him a prompt every day since April of 2021. Yeah. And so like you can use prompts. I feel like the biggest thing though is to just be quiet and still, maybe go for a walk, maybe just sit in front of your pad and paper and just go like, okay, if you don't know where you want to start, right? So you can just like choose a color or choose a fabric, or like I mentioned a moment ago, or just, you know, the thing of it is we've got the amygdala that shuts us down if we get fearful. Okay. So you want to flip that. So when we're in that creative space and we're in that space of like curiosity, mystery, discovery, that's the space you want to be in to discover what that next book is. Now, let's say you want to write a book about the healing work that you've done. Imagine one person whose story you shifted with your work and write about that, you know, and then all of a sudden, then you're starting to get into a flow of some kind. So yeah. And if you want to know more, I would love to talk to people who are interested in writing their own books.
So that leads me to here, which is how to reach Diana. So you can send her an email or send her a text, and then she'll get back to you, you know, about if you want her to help you, right?
Yes, that'd be awesome. I do these half-hour complimentary creative consults, so we can learn if we're a good match. I usually am a good match for everybody, but you know, anyway, but you know, to see if the process works for you, the ideas work for you. If you want to work with me, I'd love it. And a lot of people have trouble spelling my name, so it's Diana like the princess, Page like in a book, Jordan like Michael, DianaPageJordan@gmail.com. So
there you go. So that's
that's actually my birth name. It changed like about 7 times between then and now, but I thought, you know what, that's a pretty darn good name to be born with when you want to be a writer.
DianaPageJordan@gmail.com. Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been absolutely delightful, and I would, you know, love to talk more if you want to have me back. I'm like,
absolutely.
I got a million stories, honey, you know.
Yeah, probably once your book is published, I'll get you back.
Oh, thank you.
It's coming, right?
Yeah, well, it's with an agent right now, so it might take a while, but that's okay.
I like to say angel dust. Like we'll send angel dust onto the publisher, so he reads it and say, "Oh yeah, I want you."
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun, Denise. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So stay there. I'll be right back with you. So thank you, everyone, for listening to this amazing conversation that I had with Diana. And again, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and give me ring the little bell so you can be notified. And also, if you want to have a chat with me, don't be afraid. Book a call with me. It's tiny.cc/talkwithdenise. And that's going to be also in the show notes if you want to reach me. Thank you again for being here. Until next time, be kind to one another. And if you're in Canada, happy Family Day. Goodbye.